Cop plants drugs in black CEO's car. Seconds later, she pulls out a federal badge. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. Drug in your car. The words ripped through the morning air like a siren tearing the sky open. Gravel crunched under police boots. Red and blue lights sliced across the asphalt and traffic slowed to a crawl. Danielle Brooks didn't move. She stood on the shoulder of Highway 29, wrists cuffed in silver that caught the sun like a challenge. Her blouse was spotless, white, too calm, too perfect for chaos like this. Officer Trent held up a small plastic bag between his fingers, shaking it for the dash cam. "You're under arrest for possession." His voice was loud enough to echo off the guardrails. His partner, Officer Miller, gripped Danielle's arm as if to keep her from evaporating. But she didn't fight. She just looked at Trent, eyes, steady, voice soft. "You're sure that's mine?" Trent smirked. "It was in your car, ma'am. Unless ghosts drive black sedans now." He tossed a glance toward the camera car, already imagining his report. The heat shimmered off the road. Cars slowed. People looked. Somewhere a phone was already recording. Danielle's pulse was steady, too steady. She had seen this before. Not here, not like this, but the same tone, the same certainty of guilt before truth. Officer Miller leaned close. "We can make this easy. Tell us where you got the drugs." "I didn't," she said. "Everyone says that." He started to search her bag. A sharp, metallic clink. She inhaled, slow, controlled. The restraint wasn't weakness. It was calculation. Trent bent down to the driver's seat, pretending to inspect the area where the bag had been found. He whispered to Miller, not quietly enough, "Let's finish quick. Don't want another complaint from the diversity office." Danielle heard it. So did the truck driver parked 50 feet away. He leaned out his window, frowning. "Hey!" the man yelled. "I saw that. You tossed that bag in there yourself." Trent whipped around, barking, "Keep driving, sir." But the camera phone didn't stop rolling. Miller tightened his grip. "Ma'am, stay silent." Danielle turned her head slightly. Silence isn't the same as obedience. A line of cars had formed, now faces pressed to glass. The world was watching again. She could feel the hum of engines, the whisper of disbelief. Trent stepped closer. "You fit the description. You act nervous and you've got drugs in your car. That's all I need." Danielle tilted her head. "Fit the description. That's always your favorite line." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She looked past him, beyond the flashing lights to the horizon burning gold. "It means you've already decided who I am." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of asphalt and authority. Miller started to recite her rights, but she wasn't listening. She was measuring time, counting heartbeats. Because in less than a minute, this highway was going to become a courtroom. Trent raised the bag again for the camera, triumphant. "Got you now, sweetheart." Danielle blinked once, slow and deliberate. "Sweetheart." She repeated the word sharp enough to draw blood. Before he could answer, a dispatcher's voice crackled over his radio. "Unit 42, confirm suspect's ID. Federal database pinged back a restricted profile. Verify credentials before transport." Trent froze. "What? What profile?" The silence that followed was louder than sirens. Danielle smiled, small, patient, dangerous. "Before we continue," she said quietly, turning toward the nearest camera phone, "where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Then she faced him again. "Now back to you, Officer Trent." The next moment hung suspended, heat, breath, and dread, because something told him this woman wasn't just another traffic stop. She was the storm that ends the season. The world slowed down after the radio call. Officer Trent's confidence cracked like thin glass. Miller still held Danielle's arm, but the grip had softened, uncertainty creeping through the seams of his training. Danielle didn't say a word. She looked straight ahead, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun had burned into a white haze. Her breath was even. Her shoulders relaxed. It wasn't surrender. It was control. The dispatcher's voice came again, faint but unmistakable. "Be advised, the suspect's ID is linked to an internal clearance level. Request confirmation before proceeding." Trent frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" He looked at her license again, suddenly afraid to touch it. Danielle met his eyes for the first time. "It means you should have thought twice before assuming." Miller stepped back, confused. "Wait, ma'am, what kind of clearance are we talking about?" She didn't answer. Instead, she asked calmly, "Am I free to reach for my glove box now, or do I need permission for that too?" Trent hesitated, then motioned nervously. "Go ahead." Every sound around them sharpened the hum of the highway, the hiss of heat off metal, the faint clicks of distant phone cameras capturing the moment. Danielle leaned forward, opened the glove compartment, and retrieved a single black case the size of a passport wallet. She held it closed in her hand, her wrists still cuffed, the silver pressing against her skin. The contrast steel and silk was almost poetic. Trent barked, "That better not be a weapon." Danielle looked up, voice steady. "You'll wish it were." The driver from across the road yelled again, "You see that they're scared now." The crowd was growing. 2 more cars had stopped, one woman filming from her minivan. The scene had become its own stage, authority shrinking under its own spotlight. Danielle straightened. "You know what's sad, officer? You think this moment defines me, but it defines you." Miller's jaw clenched. "You're twisting this." "No," she said quietly. "You did that when you planted evidence." For a heartbeat silence, then the radio crackled once more. "This is Federal Command Center. Confirm if you are detaining Agent Danielle Brooks. Repeat, Agent Danielle Brooks." The words hit harder than any shout. Trent's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Miller stepped back as if the air itself had pushed him. Danielle finally exhaled the smallest breath of relief. "There it is," she murmured. She raised the black case, flicked it open with her cuffed hands. Inside lay a badge etched in gold, DEA, Federal Narcotics Division. The sunlight caught it like judgment made visible. Trent whispered, "No way you werf." "Yes," she interrupted, voice razor sharp. "And right now you're being recorded by every phone on this highway." Miller's throat bobbed as he swallowed. We didn't know, ma'am." Danielle tilted her head. "That's the problem, isn't it? You never ask before you accuse." The bystanders were murmuring now, some clapping softly, some just staring, trying to process the reversal. The man in the truck grinned. "Told y'all Trent's radio buzzed again. Officers 42 and 45 stand down immediately. Supervisory team en route. Do not engage further." Trent lowered his gaze, the heat of humiliation spreading across his face. "This can't be happening," he muttered. Danielle's expression softened, not out of mercy but precision. "It is, and it's being documented in real time." She stepped closer, the cuffs still on her tone, calm but commanding. "Now, since you've already searched my car, my rights, and my patience, why don't you call your captain and tell him who you just handcuffed?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. Every witness could feel it, the shift from victim to authority, from target to judge. Trent's hand trembled as he reached for his radio again. "Dispatch confirm credentials for Agent Brooks." The reply came immediate and cold. "Confirmed. She's your federal supervisor for interagency compliance. You're to remain on site until further instruction." Danielle looked around at the gathering crowd. "You see," she said, voice low but clear, "the difference between power and prejudice is paperwork, and I have plenty." The driver laughed out loud. Someone else shouted, "That's what I'm talking about." Danielle turned slightly toward the nearest camera, eyes calm but blazing. "You can stop filming now. Justice doesn't need an audience, it just needs memory." Then, almost to herself, she added, "And I never forget." The highway wind picked up, carrying dust and disbelief. Officer Trent stood frozen beside his patrol car, his authority melting faster than the asphalt under his boots. For the first time, he didn't know whether to salute or apologize. And Danielle, calm, cuffed, untouchable, just watched him struggle to decide. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was fear wearing a badge. Officer Trent's hands hovered midair, unsure whether to grab the radio or hide it. Miller looked from the golden DEA badge to the blinking dashboard camera, then to the line of phones recording from every angle. The power had flipped, but neither man knew what to do with the weight of it. Danielle didn't move. She stood between them and the sun, the wind tugging gently at her sleeve. Calm wasn't her mask, it was her weapon. "Remove the cuffs," she said quietly. Trent blinked. "Ma'am, we need it too. That wasn't a request." The sound of the cuffs unlocking was sharper than the siren. When the metal dropped into Miller's shaking palm, the crowd exhaled all at once, as if they'd been holding their breath for justice. Danielle rubbed her wrists, slowly, eyes fixed on Trent. "Now," she continued, "walk me through how you decided to turn a routine stop into a criminal setup." Miller spoke first, his voice cracking. "We got a call, an anonymous tip. Said a black sedan matching this plate was transporting narcotics." "Anonymous," she repeated like she was tasting the word. "Of course it was," Trent added. "Ma'am, we were just following procedure." Danielle turned, scanning the crowd. Procedure, she said louder now enough for every camera to hear, isn't planting evidence, cuffing an innocent person, or ignoring ID verification. Someone from the crowd clapped once, then again. The sound caught spreading until a half-dozen hands joined in. Trent's jaw tightened. We didn't mean harm. Look, I'm sorry if this got out of hand. Her laugh was soft but merciless. That's the thing about Power Officer Trent. It never gets out of hand, it is the hand. Miller stepped closer, voice trembling. We didn't know you were She faced him, the sunlight reflected in her badge like a mirror. So if I wasn't, you'd still be proud of this stop. He had no answer. None of them ever did. Behind them, the hum of engines filled the air again. A police supervisor's SUV pulled up, dust swirling around its tires. Captain Rhodes stepped out mid-50 seconds, gray hair, posture heavy with the kind of authority that used to silence rooms. But not this one. Not today. What's going on here? He demanded. Trent opened his mouth, then closed it again. Miller gestured helplessly toward Danielle. Sir, she's Agent Brooks. Rhodes froze. The Agent Brooks. His eyes darted to the badge, then to the bystanders still filming. His voice dropped. Everyone stand down. Danielle didn't flinch. A little late for that order, Captain. Rhodes' tone softened instantly. Agent Brooks, I assure you this will be handled. She cut him off. You're right. It will be handled. By me. He shifted uneasy. Let's not escalate this further. Danielle's gaze didn't waver. You escalated it the moment your officers decided a black woman in a nice car couldn't possibly belong here. The air tightened again, that invisible tension between apology and exposure. Cameras zoomed closer. No one blinked. Rhodes swallowed hard. Agent Brooks, on behalf of the department. She held up a hand. Stop. Don't say sorry. Say documented. Because this isn't an apology moment. It's a record. The crowd murmured, sensing another viral clip being born. Danielle turned to Trent. You said you got an anonymous call, right? Who logged it? Trent hesitated. Dispatch. Then we'll trace it. She tapped her earpiece, her voice calm but commanding. This is Agent Brooks. Initiate internal audit for Highway 29 incident. Pull body cam data, dispatch call logs, and all radio transmissions from 0942 to 1015. Captain Rhodes' phone buzzed seconds later. He checked it and went pale. The system was already sinking. Federal protocol was faster than fear. Danielle looked around, eyes steady on each officer. You all thought this was a stop. It's an evaluation. Trent stammered, Ma'am, please, we didn't mean. She interrupted softly, almost kindly. Intent doesn't erase impact. You aimed at my skin, not my license plate. Miller stepped forward, voice cracking. We're just trying to do our jobs. Then do them better, she said. The crowd erupted in murmurs again, some cheering, others whispering in disbelief. From her earpiece, a calm female voice chimed in, Agent Brooks audit initiated. Internal Affairs and Federal Oversight notified. Danielle nodded. Thank you, Carla. Keep the line open. Trent's lips parted. You have your own ops team? She smiled faintly. No, Officer Trent. I am the ops team. The captain looked at her, realizing too late that the hierarchy had flipped. Agent Brooks, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Danielle took one step closer, the sound of her heel cutting through the hot air. No, Captain. You made it public. Let's keep it that way. Phones recorded every syllable, every expression, every tremor of guilt. She turned slightly toward the cameras, her tone deliberate but not theatrical. Remember this moment, she said, because one day when you tell the story you'll realize the badge isn't what gave me power, it's what reminded you that I already had it. The wind carried her words down the highway. Even the sirens in the distance seemed quieter now. And for the first time, the officers around her weren't just afraid of what she could do, they were terrified of what she represented. The highway had turned into a theater. A dozen cars sat stalled in the heat engines, idling their drivers, transfixed by the sight of one woman standing taller than an entire department. The sirens had stopped, but the tension hummed like power lines after a storm. Danielle Brooks stood beside her car, her badge gleaming on the hood. Her posture was effortless authority. No shouting, no shaking, just presence. Then from across the median a voice rang out, Hey, I got everything on video. All heads turned. It was the same truck driver who had shouted earlier, mid-40s, sunburned face, blue uniform with Peterson Hauling Company embroidered on the chest. He jumped down from his cab phone, still rolling. I saw him toss that bag into her car. You can check my footage. Officer Trent stiffened. Sir, stay on your side of the road. Peterson laughed bitterly. Now you care about the rules. The crowd chuckled. Someone whistled. Someone else muttered, "He's right." Captain Rhodes raised a hand, trying to reclaim control. "Sir, we'll need that recording as evidence." Peterson crossed his arms. "Evidence, sure, but it's already in the cloud. Sent to 3 news outlets and my sister in Atlanta, so don't even think about losing it." Danielle hid a small smile. Witnesses. Finally, she turned toward him. "Thank you for speaking up," he shrugged. "Can't just watch this happen. Not again." His voice cracked on that last word again. Rhodes exhaled through his teeth. "This is a misunderstanding that's being resolved." Peterson pointed straight at Trent. "Nah, it's a pattern that's being exposed." Murmurs rippled through the spectators. 2 teenagers leaned out their car windows, filming every second. A mother whispered to her daughter, "Remember her name." Danielle stepped forward, calm as ever. "Officer Trent, I trust you still have that dashcam footage running." Trent nodded, silent. "Good," she said, "because we'll compare it with his. Frame by frame." Rhodes turned toward her. "Agent Brooks, please. Let's de-escalate." She faced him. "You don't get to use that word when I'm the only one who stayed calm." For a moment, even the wind seemed to hesitate. Then from behind the police cruiser, a young woman's voice trembled out. "I work dispatch for county." "That call you said came from anonymous. It didn't." Everyone turned. A civilian in a yellow safety vest stepped forward, phone in hand, shaking slightly but determined. Her name badge read Lydia Chen, Communications Support. Rhodes' face went pale. "Miss Chen, you're not authorized to. I am today," she said, interrupting. "That call didn't come from the public line. It came from an internal number, a police number." Gasps spread like wildfire. Danielle's expression didn't change. "Say that again, please, for the record." Lydia took a breath. The so-called tip wasn't random. It came from inside the department. Phones zoomed in. Every eye on the highway was locked on her. Trent stammered, "That's not possible, we were told." Lydia held up her phone screen, glowing with the call log. Time-stamped, 0941 a.m., from Precinct Extension 287. "That's your office line, Captain." Rhodes looked like the ground had vanished beneath him. That's impossible." Danielle's voice was almost gentle. "What's impossible, Captain, is that you thought no one would ever speak." Peterson laughed under his breath. "Looks like someone finally hit record on the truth." The highway erupted in murmurs and nervous laughter. Drivers honked their horns in support, one short blast after another. It wasn't noise anymore. It was rhythm. Protest improvised by strangers. Rhodes raised his voice, desperate. "Everyone, please, this is an ongoing investigation." "I'm ordering you to." Danielle cut him off, calm but final. "You don't order the truth to stop moving." She turned to Lydia. "Send that data to Carla Evans at Federal Oversight. Use priority clearance code Blue Echo." Lydia nodded. "Already uploading." The captain's phone buzzed again. His screen flashed Federal Oversight incoming inquiry. Danielle looked straight into the nearest camera. "You see how it works?" she said softly. "One person plants the lie, another repeats it, and the rest pretend it's protocol until somebody ordinary decides to tell the truth." Peterson smiled. "Guess ordinary ain't so ordinary today." The crowd broke into applause, not wild but steady, deliberate, like a verdict. Rhodes turned to Trent, whispering furiously, "Shut down the dashcam now." Danielle's tone sliced through his panic. "Try it, Captain. I'd love to add obstruction of evidence to the list." He froze, caught between defiance and surrender. The wind whipped stronger, now scattering dust across the highway, swirling around Danielle like a halo of motion. For the first time, she let herself breathe, not relief, but readiness. Because the truth had spoken up, the witnesses had awakened, and she knew what came next wouldn't just clear her name. It would rewrite the protocol of fear itself. The applause faded into an uneasy quiet. Wind rushed across the open stretch of highway, carrying with it the heat, the dust, and a low vibration of outrage too heavy to vanish. Danielle Brooks stood motionless beside her car, the badge glinting gold against the black paint. But her wrists still bore the faint red marks of the cuffs. The sting wasn't pain, it was memory. Trent stared at those marks as if they were his own sentence. His voice broke the silence. "We didn't mean to hurt you." Danielle looked at him. "You did worse than hurt me, officer, you reminded me." Her gaze drifted for a moment unfocused, the sunlight bending around her face as her mind slid backward, years collapsing into one another. Flashback 16 years old. Rain hammering the cracked pavement of her mother's neighborhood in Charlotte. Danielle clutching a backpack walking home from church. A cruiser pulled up beside her. "Where did you get that purse?" She'd answered politely. "It's my mom's." They didn't believe her. She remembered the officer's eyes, not angry, just certain she didn't belong. They'd made her stand against a wall, raindrops mixing with tears she refused to let fall. Her mother had arrived 30 minutes later screaming her name. No apology then either, just, "We thought she was someone else." The memory snapped back like elastic. Danielle's fingers twitched. The cuffs might have come off minutes ago, but the echo stayed. She straightened, voice low but trembling with precision. "Every time this happens, you all say the same thing: we didn't know. We were just following procedure." And every time the bruise fades, but the proof remains. Captain Rhodes shifted uncomfortably. "Agent Brooks, please, I understand." "No, you don't," she interrupted. "You can't, because when it's me, it's a mistake. But when it's you, it's the system." The crowd was silent now, drawn into her words. Even the air seemed to pause. Peterson, the truck driver, lowered his phone slowly. He didn't need to film anymore. He just watched like everyone else, a woman reclaiming her own narrative in real time. Trent swallowed hard. "We're sorry, ma'am. Truly." Danielle met his gaze, and for a fleeting second there was no fury in her eyes, only exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying other people's lessons on your skin. She took one step closer to him. "Officer Trent, do you know what it's like to have to prove your innocence before you even speak? To watch someone decide your worth before you've said a word?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. "Because that's what you did. Not because I broke a law, but because I broke your expectation of what power should look like." The crowd murmured a soft chorus of agreement. Rhodes stepped forward again, desperate to end the scene. "Agent Brooks, let's move this discussion to headquarters." She turned sharply toward him, cutting him off with a single glance. "No, the discussion stays right here. The humiliation was public. So will be the correction." The tension rippled through everyone. Officers, bystanders, even the wind seemed to change direction. Danielle looked down at her wrists, tracing the marks left behind. "You see these?" she said, raising them for the cameras. "They fade in a day, but what they represent lasts a lifetime. Every scar like this adds another page to a story you keep pretending isn't being written." Her voice lowered. "And I'm done being your unfinished chapter." A hush fell. Even the captain's radio stayed quiet. Then Lydia Chen's voice broke through from behind the cruiser. "Agent Brooks, the upload's complete. Internal Affairs received the full footage and call logs. They've started the trace." Danielle turned to her, nodding once. "Good. Keep it locked." Rhodes's phone buzzed again. He looked down, message from headquarters. "Hold position. Federal oversight en route. Do not interfere further." His face drained of color. "They're sending oversight." Danielle's tone was calm, almost kind. "You wanted escalation. You got it." Miller rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting between them. "Ma'am, it's going to ruin us." She paused, then said softly, "No, officer. It's going to rebuild you if you're smart enough to listen." For the first time, her voice cracked just slightly. The years of composure, of calculated restraint, trembled beneath the surface. But she didn't let it fall apart. She turned to the crowd, to the cameras, to the witnesses who now stood as part of her courtroom. "When I was 16, she began, "I promised myself I'd never let someone's prejudice become my punishment again. Today you tried. And now the system will answer for it, not with anger, but with truth." Someone whispered, "Amen." Danielle closed her eyes for a brief second, pulling her breath back under control. Then she opened them again, steady, unyielding. The camera phones trembled slightly in the wind, catching the glint of her badge as she turned toward the captain. "We're not done here," she said quietly. "We're just getting to the part where accountability begins." And in that moment, under the relentless sun and the gaze of strangers who would never forget what they'd seen, the story stopped being hers alone. It became everyone's reckoning. The sound that broke the silence wasn't a voice. It was a phone buzzing in Danielle's hand. She glanced at the screen. Carla Evans, Federal Oversight. She pressed accept. "Go ahead," she said quietly. Carla's tone came crisp through the speaker. "We've received the full file, Agent Brooks." "Confirm, do you want protocol?" Alpha initiated. Daniela's answer was soft but final. "Yes. Begin internal lockdown. I want a copy of this incident on every district commander's desk within the hour." The words fell into the hot air like a court order. Trent took a step back. "Wait. What does that mean, lockdown?" Carla's voice was calm, clinical. "It means, officer, that your system access is now suspended until further notice." Rhodes turned pale. You can't just override a local precinct." Danielle looked at him, eyes cool. "Captain, I wrote the override policy." The crowd erupted in scattered gasps and murmurs. Someone whispered, "She's running the show now." Danielle stepped forward, her heels clicking against the asphalt. You wanted to control the narrative, she said, but the moment you crossed that line, you gave it away. Peterson, still filming, grinned. This right here? This is what justice looks like. Trent's radio crackled. Unit 42, immediate suspension of all communications authorized by DEA command. Turn in credentials and equipment. He froze. That's impossible. Danielle smiled faintly. So was your assumption that I'd stay quiet. Miller rubbed his forehead. Ma'am, please, we were following procedure, she interrupted. Then let's follow mine. She turned to the crowd and raised her voice just enough for everyone to hear. Federal oversight is in motion. The audit team will arrive in minutes. If anyone has footage, send it directly to the secure address displayed on the badge. Phones buzzed as people complied. The crowd was no longer just watching, they were participating. Rhodes tried one last stand. Agent Brooks, you're jeopardizing careers. She faced him slowly. You jeopardized trust. He opened his mouth, but she lifted a hand. Don't speak. Every word you say is being transcribed. His jaw snapped shut. Carla's voice chimed again in her earpiece. Federal transport inbound. Estimated arrival 4 minutes. Danielle nodded. Copy that. Maintain live record. The air shimmered with heat and judgment. Trent shifted his weight like a man standing too close to a cliff. Danielle's voice softened, almost compassionate. Officer Trent, I don't want to destroy you. I want you to understand me. Every time you assume someone like me loses another inch of safety. Today you just lost the illusion that you had the right to decide who belongs. He whispered. I didn't mean, I know, she said gently. But intent doesn't stop a bullet or a bias. Miller looked down at the ground. So what happens to us now? Danielle turned her gaze toward the distant sirens approaching from the horizon. That depends on what you do next. Some people hide behind silence. Others start speaking truth before they're forced to. The crowd parted slightly as she walked to the edge of the highway. The light hit her face, sharp and golden. She spoke without raising her voice. Power isn't loud. It's consistent. And when it finally speaks, the world listens. A gust of wind blew dust across the road, carrying her words like a verdict. Trent's radio sputtered one last time before dying. His hands trembled. Rhodes stared at his powerless device, realization dawning that the command chain had reversed itself, the hunter now answering to the hunted. Danielle turned back toward them, the calm returning to her posture. You may call this a traffic stop, she said, but history will call it a turning point. And behind her, sirens grew louder, not a threat this time, but an escort. The sirens drew closer, steady, inevitable, like the rhythm of truth marching down the highway. Dust spiraled in the heat as a black SUV with federal insignia pulled up behind the cruisers. The logo on its door caught the Sun Department of Justice, Internal Oversight Division. Trent's knees looked weak. Rhodes's face was gray. Miller whispered a prayer he didn't finish. The SUV door opened. Out stepped a woman in a navy suit and mirrored sunglasses, stride sharp as command. Agent Brooks, she called, voice crisp. We're live on record, proceed. Danielle nodded once. Her voice dropped lower, quieter, somehow more powerful. Thank you, Director. The title hit the air like thunder. Rhodes blinked. Director. He turned to Trent. She's not just Dia. Danielle faced him, her expression unreadable. Deputy Director of Federal Operations. You cuffed a federal officer in broad daylight on video after planting evidence. Rhodes' breath caught. God. Danielle stepped forward. No, Captain. Not God. Just accountability. The crowd collectively inhaled. The energy had shifted again, this time not in anger but awe. Peterson shouted from his truck. You hear that she runs them? Phones lifted higher. Every lens locked on Danielle as she raised the badge for all to see, its gold seal glinting like judgment made physical. Trent stammered. Ma'am, Agent Director, I didn't know who you were. Danielle's tone was surgical. That's the problem. You never asked. You just saw a black woman in a car nicer than yours and decided she must be criminal. He swallowed. It wasn't like that. She took one slow step closer. Then tell me, what was it like? The part where you planted the bag, the part where you called me sweetheart, or the part where you thought your authority would protect you from the truth? Trent's eyes darted to the cameras, to the faces, watching, then back to her. She cut him off softly, her voice like a blade. You called me a suspect in a system I built. The words hit harder than any slap. The entire scene froze around her, time heat noise. Only that line remained echoing. Even Rhodes couldn't move. He whispered, She built the system. Danielle continued, voice rising by a degree, still calm but charged. Every procedure you follow, Every code you cited came from my department. You used my work to humiliate me. Carla's voice came through the earpiece, steady, verification confirmed. All active body cams syncing to federal cloud. You're clear to proceed. Danielle nodded. Thank you. Then she turned back to the officers. You said I fit the description. You're right, I do. I fit the description of every woman who refused to stay quiet, every name you forgot to remember. That's the description that scares you most. Miller's voice trembled. Please, ma'am, can we fix this? Danielle's answer was almost tender. You can start by listening when people say they belong. She took a breath, then looked into the nearest camera. No anger, no triumph, just clarity. You called me a criminal in a country I protect. You put me in handcuffs using rules I wrote. But today you learned the difference between power and permission. The crowd exploded, gasps, cheers, shouts of, say that again, and that's real power. Danielle didn't smile. She just looked at the two officers before her, the quiet in her tone more devastating than any yell. You thought silence meant surrender, she said. That was your last mistake. The director by the SUV approached, nodding toward the cruisers. Ma'am, ready for extraction? Danielle shook her head. Not yet. She turned once more to the officers. You owe the public more than paperwork. Trent's voice cracked. I'm sorry. Danielle nodded slowly. Good. Keep that energy when you testify. And as the camera zoomed in, catching the reflection of red and blue lights on her badge, she said the line that would headline every clip, every article, every memory that day. You tried to frame me on a highway you no longer control. But here's the truth. Justice doesn't need permission to arrive. The applause came like a wave, raw, unstoppable cleansing. The wind lifted her hair as she turned toward the federal SUV. For the first time since the stop began, she smiled, not because she'd won, but because the lie had lost. The applause rolled across the asphalt like thunder. Phones were still raised, but now they weren't filming chaos. They were witnessing correction. The federal agents fanned out with quiet precision, blue windbreakers flashing gold letters, Federal Oversight Unit. No shouting. No guns drawn, just authority, clean, organized, final. Captain Rhodes stood frozen beside his cruiser. This can't be protocol, he muttered. Danielle turned toward him, her expression composed. It is now. Agent Carla Evans approached from the SUV, tablet in hand. Ma'am, system sync complete. Local precinct access revoked. Authorization keys neutralized. Trent's radio beeped once, then went dead. His badge scanner flickered red, then black. Miller's tablet froze on the login screen. Access denied. The crowd gasped softly as it happened in real time. The very system these men had used to dominate others was dissolving around them, bite by bite. Peterson, the truck driver, whispered, Damn, that's justice happening live. Danielle folded her arms. Federal compliance order. All local accounts locked pending investigation. You'll surrender your credentials to Agent Evans. Rhodes' voice trembled. You can't, she cut him off. Captain, you lost that sentence the moment you forgot who you were serving. One by one, their devices beeped in surrender. Trent unclipped his badge, hands shaking, and set it on the hood of his cruiser. Miller followed, slower, face pale. The sight drew a murmur from the witnesses. Not triumph, but awe. Carla looked up. Orders confirmed, ma'am. Full accountability transfer. Incident archived, time-stamped, verified. Danielle nodded. Good. Forward the file to Justice Communications. Transparency clause, public release authorized. Trent's head snapped up. Public? You're going to make this public. Danielle's gaze was steady. You were public when you humiliated me. You'll stay public while you learn. The crowd clapped again, louder this time. Some cheered, some simply stared. For many, this was the first time they'd seen a reversal without violence, power meeting its reflection and stepping back. Rhodes rubbed his temples, whispering, My career, Danielle's tone softened, not merciful but measured. You'll still have one if you learn from this, but it won't look like command. It'll look like service. Carla leaned in. Federal transport ready, ma'am. Danielle nodded slightly but didn't move. She turned toward the witnesses, the drivers, the teenagers, Lydia Peterson. If any of you ever doubt the value of recording what you see, remember today, justice doesn't always come from a badge. Sometimes it comes from a camera or a voice that refuses to stay quiet. Lydia wiped a tear from her cheek. Agent Brooks, thank you for letting us see this. Danielle's smile was small but sincere. Don't thank me. Thank yourselves for paying attention. Behind her, Carla's team began collecting evidence, the planted bag, the body cams, the digital logs, every detail cataloged, every second preserved. Danielle walked toward her car, pausing beside the hood where Trent's badge lay glinting beside her own. She looked down at it, the symbol of power stripped bare. "You know," she said quietly, "you thought these meant control, but they're supposed to mean trust." Trent said nothing. He just nodded, eyes downcast, as if realizing the weight of that truth for the first time. The air was still now. The crowd had stopped cheering, sensing that the moment had shifted from victory to reflection. Danielle took one last look around. The broken hierarchy, the humbled men, the silent crowd standing taller than before. "Justice," she said softly, "isn't revenge. It's clarity." She turned toward Carla. "We're done here." Carla gave a short nod. "Yes, ma'am." The federal agents began packing their equipment, efficient and wordless. The highway shimmered in the sunlight, quieter than it had been all morning. As Danielle stepped into the SUV, one of the teens shouted, "Ma'am, what happens now?" She smiled, faintly closing the door. "Now," she said through the open window, "we build better stories." And with that, the door shut. Engines started. Justice drove away, not vanishing, but leaving behind a silence that finally meant peace. The highway was still. The crowd lingered as the federal SUVs disappeared down the sunlit stretch of asphalt, their reflections fading into the heat. The red and blue lights had gone dark, but something brighter remained: dignity. Danielle Brooks sat in the back seat, hands calm in her lap. Her wrists still bore faint red marks, but they didn't sting anymore. They glowed, quiet proof that control could be taken back without raising a single fist. Carla glanced at her from the front. "You okay, ma'am?" Danielle's eyes followed the horizon. "I'm fine. Just thinking how long it takes for truth to travel and how fast it spreads when it finally gets a signal." Carla smiled slightly. "That footage is everywhere already." Danielle nodded. "Good. Let them see what silence can do when it's strategic." Outside traffic began to move again. Drivers who had witnessed everything pulled back onto the road, slower this time, more deliberate. Peterson's truck rumbled forward. Lydia's yellow vest flashed near the shoulder as she helped an elderly woman cross safely to her car. For a few seconds, the highway looked almost holy, a place where chaos had confessed. Danielle exhaled, voice low. "You know what I realized today, Carla? What's that?" "That I didn't need to raise my voice to change the volume of the world." Carla glanced in the rearview mirror, smiling. "That line's going viral already." Danielle chuckled softly. "Then let it. Maybe someone out there needs to hear it." She looked down at her badge resting on her palm, the same one that had ended the storm. A thin crack ran through the enamel, almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. She traced it with her thumb. "It's not perfect," she murmured, "but neither is justice. That's why we keep doing the work." Carla didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was earned. As the SUV merged onto the interstate, Danielle turned to the window. The city skyline rose ahead, glass towers catching the late sun. Somewhere out there, someone was watching the video, feeling the same mix of rage and relief she once felt as a 16-year-old on a rainy street in Charlotte. Maybe they'd remember her face. Maybe they'd remember her words. "I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard." The camera of the world had finally tilted, and for once it was pointed at the truth. Danielle leaned back, eyes, steady voice fading into the hum of the road. "Let's get back to work." And with that, the scene closed. No music, no applause, just the steady rhythm of tires against asphalt, and the quiet knowing that somewhere one more page of history had been rewritten.